Wii Sports is perhaps one of the most iconic video games to ever exist. Sure, there's your classics, your Super Mario Brothers, your Pac-Mans, if you will, but did your grandmother's retirement home have an arcade cabinet of Donkey Kong lying around? Probably not, but I bet your ass they had at least 3 different copies of Wii Sports, I guarantee it. I'm certainly not the first white guy on the internet to tell you this, but when the Wii dropped in 2006, it was revolutionary. The idea of controlling a video game with anything other than knobs and sticks was insane enough to get you put on a witch trial. You're telling me I can swing the stick to swing this bat on my TV screen in real time? I'm in. It's that simple. Where do I sign up? Packaging in Wii Sports with the Wii was such a genius idea because not only did it give you a free game to play when you got the system, but it also served as an excellent tech demo into just what motion controls could do and the limitless potential of the technology. It really makes you wonder why this was never attempted again on future consoles, because imagine how much easier the Wii U would have been to swallow if its tie-in tech demo game wasn't sold separately for $60 US. And don't even get me started on whatever 1-2 Switch was. Seriously, did anyone even play that? After the Wii ended, Nintendo really never tried to recapture the magic of Wii Sports or its sequel, Wii Sports Resort, and it's really a bummer that the true potential of Wii Sports was forever left in the dust, just buried to time. But then again, maybe leaving Wii Sports behind was the best decision for all of us. But fuck it, right? Nintendo needs money. Gotta cover up all those human rights violations after all. Yes, on February 9th of 2022, Nintendo finally announced the game we've been waiting on for decades. A new installment of the Wii Sports franchise for the Nintendo Switch. A sort of Nintendo Switch Sports, if you will. From the moment that this trailer dropped, the internet went insane. People lost their damn minds over this. It'll be just like old times, we all thought. Finally, we can go bowling in our own homes again without having to dust off the old Wii and pray to the Lord it can still read discs. Then, the trailer ended. We had a moment to absorb what we just saw, and then everyone's reaction sort of turned. Because... Who are you people? Now, before I go any further, I want to clarify that this is not just going to be a video shitting on Switch Sports for the sake of it. From what I've heard, it plays fine enough, it's fun to play online with your friends. But it can't be denied that Switch Sports shares very little of its DNA with Wii Sports. You see, Switch Sports is an example of one of man's greatest follies. Sequels that we all think we need, but do not actually want. As I'm sure you're aware, Wii Sports was a product of its time, and as much as we all thought that a sequel would be the answer to all of the world's problems, the moment that this trailer dropped, it was abundantly clear that a modern Wii Sports just isn't Wii Sports. It's something else entirely. So today I want to go back to 2006 and look at the original Wii Sports. Not as a game, but as an aesthetical identity. We're going to break down exactly what made Wii Sports so memorable, from its music and sound effects to its aesthetics and identity, and explain why we still talk about and play this free tech demo from 16 years ago, and why Switch Sports fails to serve as a sequel in any sort of meaningful way. Now, as I hinted earlier, I have not actually played Switch Sports. Since I'm not discussing gameplay in this video, I didn't deem it necessary, but to entirely make sure I'm getting the full picture, I interviewed Rob from the channel Pixel Pursuit about his experiences with the game, which I'll be referring to throughout the video. Rob produces some really high quality game review and game collection videos, and if that sounds like your sort of thing, I highly suggest checking out his channel and subscribing. Now, Wii Sports, on the other hand, I'm lucky enough to own a copy of, and you bet your ass I grinded the shit out of this for several days just so I know what I'm talking about. And yes, my arms were extremely sore after playing, far more than they had any right to be. Wii Sports will make you feel shame about your upper body strength in a way no personal trainer ever could. I actually recorded some of my first impressions on a whim immediately after my first grind session, and I didn't know where else to put this in, so I'm haphazardly throwing it in here. Enjoy. So I just finished day 1 of my Wii Sportsification training, okay? I'm trying to immerse myself in the world of Wii Sports and become a pro at every single sport in the game, just so I can, make sure I have the immense knowledge for this video, the knowledge of everything Wii Sports. So I played tennis, baseball, and bowling so far today. So far, of the 3, I think tennis is my favorite. Did I just say a sentence that's never been said before? I don't know, man. Look, I'm just gonna be honest here, okay? I just waggled around until I won, and somehow I got pro within an hour and 10 minutes of playing, which is probably just because I'm built different like that. Baseball, I'm kind of undecided on, alright? I hate baseball in real life. I think baseball in Wii Sports is better than baseball in real life. I think the main thing with baseball is that it just goes on for way too long. I don't know if I'm even gonna get to pro in it because it's a lot. You play for 15 minutes and you get 20 points. My primitive monkey brain, I'm not getting the dopamine fast enough for baseball. TikTok has ruined my generation's attention spans too much. I don't know. Baseball might have to get the shaft on this one. The thing with baseball that I find really interesting is that most of the mechanics are told in the game's instruction manual. The manual is actually in here. It's yeah, there it is. So if you're just playing the game, you don't know that holding down the A button when pitching is a curveball or whatever. Holding down B is a split. Bowling is the one game that I haven't stopped playing. And so I don't really have any interesting thoughts or anything on it. It's bowling. I think, ironically, it actually has less depth than tennis, which I wasn't expecting. It's bowling. So yeah, I'm kind of a Wii Sports aficionado, if you couldn't tell by that clip there. But again, gameplay isn't really the main aspect of this video. I want to talk about how Wii Sports makes me feel, and why I think Switch Sports fails to recapture that in any sort of meaningful way. And I can't think of a better place to start than talking about Wii Sports' musical identity. The soundtrack to Wii Sports is genius in a way that I don't think enough people appreciate. As stated before, Wii Sports was a game packaged in with a system for free, and the sound design team could not have done a better job connecting these two together. Every song in Wii Sports feels quintessential to the Wii era. These songs were just handcrafted to fit right in alongside the system's menu music. Things like the Wii Shop theme and the various channel music and the main menu theme. They all feel part of the same genre that I can only think to classify as Wii music. No, not that Wii music. One thing you may have never noticed, however, is how out of the way this soundtrack actually is. Here's a fun fact. 4 of the 5 sports have no official music during gameplay. Bowling is the only sport in the entire game that has its own music, most likely because it takes place inside of a bowling alley where background music would actually be expected. As for tennis, baseball, golf, and boxing, the only sounds you'll be hearing during gameplay are the sounds of the sport, which goes a long way in adding to the atmosphere. You really feel like you're at the ballpark on a beautiful sunny day as the crowd cheers and murmurs in the background, and very short baseball jingles play as you reach the bases and hit home runs. You really feel like you're in a boxing match as intense rock music loops during the replays, only to fade to silence when the match starts. The crowd roars. The lack of music during gameplay really lets those iconic sound effects take center stage. You feel that racket smack that tennis ball across the court. You feel how hard your club knocks that golf ball. It's such a perfect balance. The music bops your socks off whenever you're navigating menus or results screens, but the moment you start playing, it knows when to shut up and let you immerse yourself in the sport at hand. The sound design in Wii Sports was legendary, in my opinion, and really helped shape the atmosphere of the game without beating you over the head. Unlike Switch Sports, which has a metal club in its hand at all times. And I ain't talking about golf, because that's not coming until this fall. Any immersion found in the original Wii Sports is completely lost in Switch Sports, as the game is constantly reminding you that you are, indeed, playing a video game. Every single one of the 6 sports here includes music during gameplay, which totally destroys that peaceful vibe that the original game had. What's worse, however, is that none of the gameplay music even remotely sounds like it belongs in a Wii Sports sequel. It's fine, sure, some of it is quite good actually, but it really takes away from the charm that the original had. I don't know. I think part of the reason that like Wii Sports, kind of like had the atmosphere was just because like it was like when you're, the menus and like the everything, had like this awesome, iconic music, obviously. But when you're playing the game, it was just like, you're playing a sport almost. You can kind of like, you could really put yourself in there. So I
Yeah.
think that immersion kind of lost a little bit? Do you feel like more like you're playing a video game and not like a sports simulator?
Yeah, I suppose there is an element of that because I think the thing is with Wii Sports, the reason that I've probably never noticed that there's no music is because the sound effects were probably doing a lot of the heavy lifting. But I suppose with Wii Sports, not Wii Sports, with Nintendo Switch Sports having music, it does kind of make it into an experience where you almost feel less like you're actually doing the sports and more like you're controlling another character playing the sports, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, that was kind of what I was getting at. Yeah, it's like that immersion's just kind of lost. To me, music is always one of the most important parts of establishing a game's identity. So when you take that away, it's already going to be kind of a tough sell to try and convince me that this is a sequel, you know? Switch Sports didn't stop there, however, in its attempt to distance itself from its predecessors. And I think you all know where I'm going with this. It's time we talk about one of Wii Sports' most defining features, and one of Switch Sports' most tragic losses. The Miis. So the story goes that when Nintendo was originally creating Wii Sports, they wanted to make it as accessible to newcomers as possible. They decided to stay away from using fancy graphics and using professional athletes, and instead decided to use their upcoming console's default avatar system, the Miis. Not only does it immediately showcase the Mii creation software that's built into the Wii, giving it a practical purpose in a tie-in game that would be most people's first experience with the console, but it also just allows you to become that much more immersed in the world of Wii Sports. Like, could you imagine if they actually did use professional athletes or even Super Mario characters, which was actually considered at one point? Like, how would we, as a society, live with ourselves? The Mii creation tool needs no introduction or explanation. You all know what this is and how it works, and if you don't, why are you even watching this video? Seriously, Miis are such a great avatar system because they're so simplistic, yet there's so much customability that anyone can make one that looks like themselves, or just some sort of abomination. Wii Sports really pushed the concept of what could be done with these guys, because Miis pop up everywhere. My favorite example is in baseball, where both your team and the opponent's team are made up entirely of Miis created on your system. It creates this sense of familiarity, seeing your friends and family members and, whatever the hell this thing is, cropping up throughout the game. Also, something obligatory Matt reference. Confusingly enough, Switch Sports just gets rid of the Miis altogether, replacing them with these generic avatars called Sportsmates. Wow, Nintendo headquarters must have really fried their brains coming up with that clever name. Again, this goes against what the core identity of Wii Sports was. But not only that, these guys just suck. Oh, that's right. I was gonna ask about the avatars. They're not that customizable, are they? Like, compared to, like, Mii's.
You can customize them, you can customize the
Right,
eyes and stuff like that, but it's very, very minimal in compared to the Mii's, like you say. The thing that is good is that you do unlock, like, loads of new clothes, and you also unlock, like, new, like, bowling balls and, like, tennis rackets and, like, volleyballs.
It's just wild that, like, they cut the Mii's out so hard, because, like, from what I've seen, like you said, even, like, the avatars aren't that customizable. Like, there's, a couple, correct me if I'm wrong, there's, like, a couple different hairstyles, right? A couple different eyes and stuff, but,
Yeah,
like...
you do unlock new eyes and hairstyles. That's one thing. So, like, maybe eventually, after you've played it for quite a while, you probably will unlock a lot more customization stuff. But like I say, you need to play it quite a lot to unlock anything, and you don't know what you're going to unlock to a degree, so...
And that kind of ruins, like, the charm a little bit, because with Wii Sports, right, you can make a Mii that looks, like pretty much exactly like you, or at least, like, as close as you can get, and you can do that before you even boot up the game, right?
Yeah,
And that sucks that, like, if it even is possible to make the avatar kind of look like you, you've got to sink a ton of hours into it. And by the time you've gotten to that point,
I
right,
couldn't make one that looked like me at all. So, like, mine, I don't know, mine's kind of like wearing a hat or something to hide the hair.
It's kind of like, not Avatar, like Animal Crossing, right?
Yeah.
Like that kind of customization level. Yeah, no,
I would say
really
even Animal
unfortunate.
Crossing is probably a little bit more in depth. At least without unlocking anything in Nintendo Switch Sports, it is.
Now, I know that Miis are still technically in the game or whatever. You can still choose to play as them. But it's just not the same, you know? There's not the same focus on them. Not only are all the NPCs in this game just sports mates, but the Miis in this game, if you can even call them that, are just Mii heads stacked on top of a sports mate's body like some sort of perverted Frankenstein's monster. I could make an entire video about the downfall and degradation of the Miis, but we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Now, one final thing that I feel like I need to harp on is the aesthetical difference in Switch Sports, which is something that's less of Switch Sports' fault and more of a byproduct of the changing times. Part of the problem with bringing something back that's been dormant for over a decade is that it's almost impossible to recapture that specific moment in time. Wii Sports' simplistic, warm, fuzzy graphics and bulgy, clunky UI are products of a time long past, and it's really evident when even just looking at Switch Sports. Everything is so minimalistic and clean and out of the way, and you know, I'm not even saying that this is a bad thing per se, but it's just so different from what the Wii Sports experience was like. I'm not saying that Switch Sports is a bad game, although if I were properly reviewing it, there's a lot more negatives I could get into. But what I'm really trying to get across is that Switch Sports is like a monkey's paw wish. For years, we were all begging for something like this, but now that it's out, it's abundantly clear that you can't capture lightning in a bottle twice. Switch Sports will probably be forgotten in about 15 years, especially since it's so dependent on online servers, which will be shut down in about a decade. But Wii Sports will forever remain an iconic piece of pop culture history. You know, just forget everything I said. This game is mid as fuck.